meeting of the Riverside City Council for Thursday, October 18th, 2012. Work session to order. Start off with a roll call, please.
Ms. Gamble? Here. Mr. Pure?
Present.
Mr. Gilman?
Here.
Mr. Fulenkamp?
Here.
Mr. Schott?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mayor Flatty?
Here. Next thing is additions or corrections to the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
did you want to strike something from the agenda for the work session, or do you just want to leave it there and just skip
Well, I
it?
was just going to talk about it when we got to it, but we can take it off the agenda, but I do want to talk about it.
Oh, well, we'll leave it on the agenda then.
Okay. Is that a motion then, Mr. Shaw?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Schock, second by Deputy Mayor Denning to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. That gets us into work session items, and the first thing is board and commissions. So, Mr. Manager, I'll just go ahead and jump right into that, if that's okay. Mr. DeFalco had applied for this position as BZA, for the opening on the BZA, and he was ready to come tonight, and then he called about 5-ish, no, about 4:30-ish, and said he can't make it because they're opening up the club tonight due to, they had it closed due to an accident on Sunday. So he couldn't make it, and then we also received, Mary Ann received an email from Alice Waddell, and she would like to be on the BZA, or be considered for the BZA. So at this point, if it's council's pleasure, since neither one of them are here, and Mr. Waddell hasn't filled out the application yet, I would like to postpone this until the November 1st meeting, and then we can have legislation for the November 15th meeting, and the BZA doesn't meet until after that. Is that correct? So they would still be able, if they have a meeting, they would still be able to have that. So if that's council's pleasure, we will move on to the next item.
Are we leaving the application process open, or are we closing it, and those are the only two that we're going to accept? I mean, was there a date limit
I
on
put,
any of that?
I put October 18th as a date limit, but these are the two that I've received. If you want to continue.
Well, if that's the date, no.
I want to make sure that that's what we're doing, is that we're limited, and if we said these are the limits, you need to be in by this date, that we're not expanding that, we're just going to hold that off.
The point is though that Ms. Waddell hasn't got her
She just sent me the
application
email.
in,
Right.
so
she talked-
should be excluded too?
No, she just talked to
Well, why-
Ryan, I think.
Well, she got her letter of intent in.
Yeah.
She just probably didn't know the process, so.
Well, I mean, if someone were to come forward, I'd hate to say no to them, but I understand the concern about process, so.
I would just like to see us stick to a process for a change.
You agree?
I agree.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
No, hold on now.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Fulenkamp. If we're extending our date for screening people, I don't know why we shouldn't extend the date for people getting their paperwork in. I hate to pass up an opportunity to screen other qualified folks if they come forward.
But does that mean we have to advertise it again, or just leave it on?
Just leave it open.
That's fine. I was just asking a question.
Yeah, I agree with that too, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Yeah, I think, Deputy Mayor? I think we have a consensus? Okay. Okay, so then, if we do get any more in, then just please let us know by email.
Sure.
And as soon as we get Alice's in, we'd like to see that.
I was going to schedule interviews for the next meeting as well. So if I get any applications in, I will also invite them for an interview on the first if that's all right.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Next thing is a discussion of the 2013 budget revenue enhancements. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Included in your packet was an updated version of the proposed 2013 budget, which included estimated fund balances as well as some previously known but not yet inserted capital costs. So we did go ahead and include all of that information information. The highlighted lines within the budget that was included in the packet are where those changes occurred, where modifications were made from the version you viewed back earlier in the month. Admittedly, there were a couple of other items that were excluded that I do have, and I'd like to make a note for you all so that you have this information prior to the discussion. With respect to the Historical Society, which is on page 5 of 13 in the expense category, their budget request arrived a little late. We got it earlier this week. They asked for an additional $600. That rounds it up to $5,000 total for that line item. So I would make note that unless council would offer an objection, that line item will change from the $4,400 to the $5,000. On the page prior to that, on page 4 of 13, under general government expenses, it's going to be the facility maintenance line item. It ends 5252 with 4 digits. There was a HVAC maintenance contract that we would like to have included in that line item. And so that line item total, the new total will be $18,200.
What number was that page?
It's expense page 4 of 13.
What was the line item, please?
It ends 5252, facilities maintenance,
You want 18,000.
18,200, yes, sir. Now, while we are in the expense section, page 7, which is the service department budget. I believe council has been briefed at previous meetings related to the traffic signal on Burkhart in front of St. Helens, and the fact that that signal is old and components in that system can no longer be repaired. They have to be replaced or updated. We've had some better numbers on what it will cost to work on that system, and it will also, and the intent is to relocate that signal a little further to the east in front of St. Helens driveway and relocate the crosswalk. The expense side, which is 5371 on page 7 of 13, the total line item currently reads, I believe it is 100,000. That line item should read 105,000. That additional 5,000 is to relocate and mark a handicap accessible crosswalk. And just up from that is the signal maintenance line item, which ends 5346. And that number should be changed to 70,000, 70,000. What's that, sir?
That increases part of what?
That increase is also part of the traffic light relocation and upgrade.
That was 5346, you said?
Yes, 5346. Okay. And then because the light is being relocated in part to assist St. Helens with some of its traffic management, on the revenue page 1 of 8, miscellaneous revenues towards the bottom of the page. It ends 4497. That account should now total $26,000. We anticipate St. Helens paying approximately $16,000.
That would be line item number 4498.
4497, page 1 of the revenue sheet.
Okay.
Right down here, miscellaneous income 4497. It currently reads 10,000. It should read 26.
So, what's that leave us for
about 24,000 for the city, about 16,000 for St. Helens. And there'll be additional costs that St. Helens will be required to incur above and beyond. So they have to pay out of their pocket for the installation of the traffic loop, which is the weight sensor when the cars drive on it that trips the light. They'll have to pay to draft and file a maintenance easement for the city to be able to maintenance that in the future. So there's some additional costs that St. Helens will also be bearing as part of this project.
Now, I understand we have a pole that is going to be given to us by the city of Evendale.
We have several poles that we have purchased. We're in the process of purchasing.
Purchasing, yeah.
Yes, sir.
All we had to pay for was the transportation to get them here?
We're paying the scrap metal value, which is what Evendale is going to basically haul them to the scrap yard and turn them in for cash. So they agreed to sell them to us for that value. So these poles, which are worth several $1,000s, are actually going to be purchased for just a few hundred.
Okay, so that doesn't change anything?
No.
So the 45,000, we go back to service department expense budget, page 7.
Yes.
15.
Page 7 of 13?
Yes, sir.
The 40,000 under 5346 is equipment and maintenance, or equipment and labor.
Yes, sir. That typically is for when we have damage to controller cabinets, when we have to have the lights resynchronized.
Well, but the difference is 40,000. So that 40,000 is for the light and for,
And for regular maintenance, yes, sir.
and would include other materials associated with putting the light in.
Yes, sir.
So I'm seeing a bump in, the cost of that light being 30,000 for us, with the 5,000 and the,
Yes, the total cost, our total annual cost for all traffic signals on local roads is about 30,000. This one-time expense to relocate the St. Helens light, total for the signal is about $40,000. Of that 40, St. Helens will pay 16, the city will pay 24. Okay.
On that, I believe it was the second expense you mentioned for the service department.
Yes.
You said it was a contract for HVAC.
Yes, sir.
What page was that on again?
That would have been, that's the general government, page 4 of 13 on the expense page. Ending 5252. I believe that number is 16,000 as current.
Here it is. Okay, yeah, we changed that to 18.2.
Correct.
Wouldn't that be under 5289, same page, under contracting services? Because you're gonna contract that.
Well, correct, and the line item is facilities and ground maintenance outsourced.
Yeah, but an HVAC system doesn't give a grant, it's building.
We correct facility. So that's why we look into that account.
So it's for the service department, is that what you're saying?
No, it's for this building. It's actually is for this building, the service department, the sign shop, and Station 6.
That's three. Three. Right.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Well, you said it's for Station 6, the service department, and this building,
And the sign shop.
and the sign shop. Okay, so we're looking at four.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Okay, I just have a question about line item 5321 on page 4 of 13. The newsletter, you increased it by 5,000. I know we had a discussion about this. I'm wondering if council wants to visit this. So, Mr. Manager, would you explain why you increased it to 5,000?
Sure, there was discussion, I believe it was at the prior council meeting, and there was a discussion about whether or not we should include more newsletters. The last 2 years, I believe, we sent them quarterly. Prior to that, we sent them every other month. So there was a discussion about whether or not we should increase the total number of newsletters to improve how we communicate to our residents. And staff had an internal discussion about that issue following council discussion, and I think what we identified was not the frequency, but the detail in which we're able to communicate. So we felt that council's intent was not to increase in frequency, but the ability to increase content. And so what we did was we estimated the cost to include an additional page front and back within each quarterly newsletter, and that was the number that we came up with.
Does council agree with that, or are there any thoughts about that?
More transparent, basically.
What was the question, Mr. Smith?
I said this is pretty much about being more transparent to the public about what's going on here at City Hall and with the city
I
government.
think it's about getting more information out to the folks.
Yeah.
And, you know, and the big thing is that quarterly, I mean, is the information getting there in a timely manner, and is it soon enough or often enough for what we're trying to convey? Now, I'm gonna go, this sort of on the subject, but off the subject, but my thought, I was thinking about this, trying two things. One, trying to cut our costs, and at the same time, give our public more information. And I was wondering if it would be possible, I know there are other places that do it, is that folks sign up and we send it to them electronically, and they get it by email, and so they would go to the city's website, sign up for that they do want to get this information, and we would be able to send it to them electronically. And I don't know, this would be kind of a mess for you guys possibly, but when we do that, then we somehow cross-check that and take them off our mailing list because they're getting it electronically, and we move towards the future. Now, I understand that not everybody has computers and not everybody has access, but it would be a way for folks to get it and costing us, wouldn't cost us the postage, it would still cost us the time to put it together because our staff does that, but it wouldn't cost us, it could possibly cut down on different things. And if this would become a positive thing and our mailing list, so to speak, got large enough, we could even expand that to special, I don't know, for no better, like a call one type of thing where if there was something, a storm coming or something, they could get an email saying, hey, y'all need to keep your cars off the street because there's a snowstorm coming in or whatever. I don't know, it's a long-term thing, it's something to think about. I don't see it happening this year, but it's something that I think we need to think about towards the future.
Well, we are revamping the city's website. Is there some way we could inform the residents that if they want to have it have this by email versus hard copy? Would that be something we could do without creating a huge volume of work?
I wasn't prepared for that question, but
Sorry, Brian.
it can be done. I mean, I can't outline the logistics. As I recall, I'm not very hands-on with the newsletter other than an article or two that I may provide, but as I recall, we confirm the mailing list prior to the newsletter going out. At least I know that was the habit in the past. So it's quite possible that we could just simply receive emails through regular channels, and then 2 or 3 weeks prior to the newsletter being ready to be mailed, we could go through and validate who's on, who's off that list, and then we would just simply keep an update. And I think that it would be easy to do because you would get email name, their email address, or they deleted it, so we would pick those off. And then in the interim, we would just continue to collect email addresses every so often.
Well, what I was thinking was put an article in the next newsletter that says, if you wanna get this by email, let us know. Is there some way we could do that?
Well, we could, but we're actually in the process of getting ready to send out the next newsletter, so.
Oh, well, I mean, okay, the next
Right.
newsletter after that.
So, would we accrue significant savings by trimming our mailing list, or does the way we mail kind of not provide as much savings?
It is a bulk mail permit,
Right.
so, I know that the pricing changes even on your bulk rate depending on how much bulk you buy. So there may be, at some point in time, there may be a line where that efficiency is crossed, where we are buying too few.
We don't know what that.
But I don't know.
Threshold
Yeah, I
is.
don't know.
I think that's worth looking into, but I think that is.
My long-term thought is, my long-term thought is that eventually we would be able to get more information out more often,
True.
because it would be, I mean, it's, put it together and you send it to the group of folks that are in your email, and, and then it's one of those things, well, email people are getting more information, well, maybe you should jump on the email wagon. And I'm not trying to keep it away from everybody else, but,
I'm not disagreeing.
I mean, if it's easier for us to get the information out, I'm sure we will do that more often, and it would be less expensive to do it electronically
Yeah.
than it would be, and that was my only general thought. Because I know
Lots
a lot
of folks are
places
doing it, or
I know a lot of
changing
places are doing it that way
Lots of
instead of printing it.
But again, it depends what kind of distribution.
No, I agree.
That's the issue.
I understand that, but I think.
I mean, the point I want to make is, that, I mean, assuming there's, how many households, how many places do we mail this newsletter?
I'm not quite sure what the total address count is. I can tell you that there's about 8,100 single-family and two-family structures in the city.
Does this include apartment
Yes.
addresses? So just using the 8,000 as a number, we're spending about currently $1.25 per household to send
Per
this
year.
out per year, which I think is next to nothing. I mean, I think most people would say that's in the noise. And I agree, I don't want just quantity, I do want quality. And if we're gonna add a couple pages, I mean, I talked to you about this. I mean, I prefer 6 and 4 pages, but I can work with 4 pages, 4 times a year and 6 pages. And my intent would be to bring in more information on what council, what we've been doing, both in the past and in the future. So my intent is kind of like Mr. Smith said, let's tell them what we're doing, and why we're doing these things.
You've budgeted 15,000. I don't think that we're going to increase our postage by $5,000 adding a page or two.
It's basically what I did was.
I think your number is probably a good number, but I think at the end of the year, it's gonna come in less than 15.
And it very well might. Basically what we did is I took the known budget for last year and divided it by the total number of pages we printed, divided by the total number of times that we mailed, and then I just simply multiplied that divisor by 2, and that's how I got the extra
Did you
5,000.
add the extra penny? Postage is going up?
I did neglect to carry over the penny.
But Mr. Smith, you have to remember the last meeting, they showed 12,500. It didn't start from 10,000 the last meeting. We were already at 12,500. I think he's saying $2,500 will buy us an extra 2 pages.
Would be
Per
2,
issue.
4, 6.
And that's
Yes.
about right, because, you're mailing to 8,100, so that's 810 pennies
So,
additional. I think you're within,
Well,
I think you're within
Well,
range.
okay.
I just want to make a comment before we get into this even more. Just my opinion. My opinion is I have not had any complaints about the amount of information that's in the newsletter. If we put more in, I'm not sure the citizens are upset about that. Is this something that council members are hearing, that we don't have enough information in our newsletter?
I think the problem is the citizens don't know what they don't know.
Exactly.
If we don't communicate to it, they don't know that it happened. And so you have to communicate more in order for them to know what's going on. But right now, they see what they get, and if they think that's what goes on, then they're satisfied perhaps. Others aren't. They think there needs to be more visibility. Those are the comments I get. They need more visibility, what's going on.
And I think
Transparency.
it would help also with events that are taking place here in the city. It would help with participation from the residents. Because more
Such
people
as-
will be in there.
Which events are we, you
I
think
mean,
you got
you got your safety, your bike rodeo is a good example. You got that twice a year.
But that's not gonna change because it's already been put in there and we're only doing it 4 times a year. So by adding another page to it,
You're just
2
adding-
pages
you're
to it,
just
does that add
You're
to?
adding content. That's just an example,
Yeah.
okay?
I just wonder if it's worth $5,000. I wanna make sure everybody's comfortable with that, just adding an
2,500.
Isn't,
an additional page or 2, is that something we wanna do?
can we get like a phone number or some kind of phone number where when the newsletter goes out, if they read this, please call us, know you're reading this, and get a count how many people actually reading it. Lots of us throw them away.
I mean,
There are some
I would have to pull the survey data, but in late 2000, it was about this time, 2010, when we did our community survey, we actually asked how do people get their information, and quite a bit of them said that they get it from the newsletter and they use it on a regular basis.
85% said
Was
they
the number
use,
that high?
85% said they use the newsletter at least once a month.
Because there's a lot of people out there, they don't even vote, they don't care, they throw it away.
Or maybe that's 15%.
That was
So everybody
That was
comfortable?
85% of the people that answered the survey.
But it was a legitimate survey, we had enough number of
But that
responses.
survey's been used for other purposes.
I'm not discounting that, I'm just putting it into perspective.
Is that per person or per household?
No, that's per, if we sent out 5,000 surveys and we only got 100 back, 85% of
And
them.
those numbers are in that survey,
Right.
and I can dig them out if you'd like
No,
to see them.
I can appreciate that, I just,
Okay, everybody comfortable with that? No, that's okay then. We can move forward, but I would like to, if you would put something in the next one about if you want this emailed instead of sent, if there's a way we could do that?
But we would
I
need to
think that
work
would
out,
be very helpful.
we would need to work out the logistics, so as soon as we can figure out a way to work out logistics and track it all, we'll be more than happy to we'll put it on the website, we'll put it in a newsletter.
the way I envisioned it was they would go to the website and fill out a form of some sort that would then,
I think maybe.
And I know,
be more
I mean,
effective.
yeah, but that's the way a lot of folks get their subscription, electronic subscriptions.
Oh,
And then we use that.
I get all.
Then we use that email list for whatever. we
Okay,
can.
Of course, while they're at the website filling out the form, they can also read the newsletter. 'cause it's
Well,
not-
exactly, they could,
Website.
they could, but there's that personal getting it in your mailbox that,
Although you're correct, if we can, if there's a certain number that we can not send it to and save a little money, I don't have a problem with that.
well, and
The
I mean,
problem, when I have a problem with that is when those people move and then that address does not get anything.
right,
Right.
no, and I understand that.
Well, I mean, the National League of Cities now, we don't get a newspaper anymore, it's all online.
Yeah, everything is moving to online.
Everything, yeah. all-
And so, to me, I was just trying to move us a little bit forward, and hopefully save us some money.
And if you need help, National League of Cities would be more than happy to tell you how they do theirs. I'm sure, because they have, 12,000 members or something, so, and they're able to handle it, I'm more than that. They have a lot of members. So they handle it in some way. So I was thinking that we could be able to.
But my thought beyond that was also that then we would have an email list to send out other information.
That's
Well, that's true.
If we needed
That's
to,
right.
and it would be
Yeah.
valuable for storm warnings or whatever. If
Cancellation
we have a
of
big
meetings.
windstorm, their internet goes out, they don't get the email anyway.
Okay, any other further discussion on that? Okay, then we keep moving forward with that. Okay, any other questions on the budget?
Oh.
Mr.
No,
Smith?
not Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
On the expenses, page 3 of 13, planning and economic development, line item 5246. I see an increase in subscriptions and memberships of $900 and travel and transportation of $1,500.
Yes, sir.
Can you explain that?
Sure. The subscriptions and memberships, our new planning and zoning administrator is a member of AICP, which is the Accredited Planning Association. So he would like to maintain his membership. We feel that's to our advantage. And then there is also a periodical that comes with that.
Via
Additionally,
email or real hard copy?
I don't know, not,
Just kidding.
again, not a question I was prepared to answer. As far as the travel and training, as a certified member of the AICP, he is required to maintain continuing credit, education credits. So that additional travel and training expense is also to enable him to maintain his AICP accreditation.
Okay, this is the zoning guy?
That is correct, planning and zoning administrator, yes, sir.
All right. And Mr. Murray is planning and economic development?
He is the director of,
Correct. All right, a lot of titles.
Okay. Any other questions?
I had one on expenses, page 5 of 13, boards and commissions. I was curious why health and safety went from $1,700 to $5,500.
yes, sir.
Large, very large increase, especially for just a commission that's supposed to be an advisory council.
They had, the commission had discussed ways in which they could expand their outreach into the community for their purpose. And what they looked at doing was acquiring, or what they would like to do, which is why the budget is for this year increased, is to acquire basically a lacquered printer to do the identikit cards that the sheriff's office used to do, and that some other regional police departments, I know some have had the program and reduced it. So they were looking at this as an added feature to do for the bike rodeo events, that they would be able to get perhaps maybe on base during a tattoo event, and set up shop, go to the festival, maybe attend some events at the schools. So this is an attempt for them to be able to get out into the community more often and more frequently, as opposed to just the twice a year where they hand out money.
And we couldn't work with the Lions and the JCs and the VFW and the American Legion and get that donated so that it didn't have to come out of the city budget?
I think that'd be a good idea.
I don't necessarily know that that would be a bad idea, and I don't necessarily know that that practice is excluded from the commission's thinking. They were of the impression, and I was of the impression, that they would prefer to have this piece of equipment and for it to be able to be in use sooner rather than later. And these are also the same organizations that are routinely tapped by
But thi-
several other organizations for
But
these things.
this is a very community situation, which is for our kids. And I think that specifically those four organizations have always stepped up when asked, whether it's $500 or $1,000, or they run something specific to make it.
$18,000 you did one of the.
And $18,000 for a thermal imaging camera. So I don't see that, but those organizations can't, if they don't know about the problem, they can't help fix the problem. So if they haven't been asked, and I understand sooner rather than later, but if they haven't been asked, the other question I have is, isn't health and safety an advisory group just like all the other commissions and not necessarily a working group? I guess I'm a little confused by that whole situation because of the way the charter reads. That I'm a little confused.
Well, adding to that, didn't the Parks and Rec Commission make a park over on Glendean? Clear out an area?
Well,
Isn't that kinda like-
there were groups that went in and did that for Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec didn't do it.
But there was members of Parks and Rec there.
They showed up and watched.
But the point is, that's not the point. The point is that they might want to do that. Mr. Fulenkamp?
Why is everybody else getting out of this business?
Well, mostly because it's done by, like for instance, in the sheriff's department, it was a special detail. So they had a person who worked outside of regular hours, and so they had additional expenses to send that person in specific instances. Whereas in this instance, and that was all over the county. In our particular instance, it would be here local in the community. Not only do you have the volunteerism of that particular commission, or excuse me, that particular committee, but you also have the fire department, members of the fire department, and members of the police department who are typically at those events as well, or can at least be in close proximity to assist. So there was, like I said, the belief that, and the desire for that commission and its membership, it was their desire that they have opportunities to be out more in the public and in the community to have that positive presence.
So they want to get out more.
That is correct,
They're
yes.
willing to go out to these other events in our community and man this booth.
That's their intent through the course of the discussion. So,
And so this is a one-time capital investment that we're making for this group. Is that
there would need to be additional There would need to be additional operating supplies. I think they can do about, I think it's 1,000 of the ID lanterns for about $1,000. So it's about $1 a card.
And how much materials of consumables have you included in this?
1 year,
1 year.
which would be about 1,000.
And they're never gonna do 1,000 in a year.
I mean, it's possible. I mean, at the bike rodeo, they'll clear like between 150 and 200 helmets at each rodeo.
Okay, all right.
So depending upon, what else they take on.
Yeah. I'm sure at the festival, it's a bunch.
Well, I like the idea that Mr. Denning, Councilman Denning brought up, about going to the local service groups and asking for a donation. But I think we can't rely upon that. We ought to transfer the money into this account, go for it. And if we get the additional funds from the service groups, that's great. I mean, they don't have to spend the money.
Okay.
I think
So we can offset it.
I think that's fair, that's fair. And, I mean, when we went to when the J.C.'s gave that last huge donation, I personally went to their meeting and requested it. If they want me to do that, I would be more than happy to personally go to them if that would be helpful. Or, I'm just offering my services.
I don't think that's necessary. I think they just need to know that it's a need for the community. I think if they knew it was a need,
Well, I just offer my services if that would be helpful.
Yeah.
The Lions Club, they meet at the same time we do.
I know, the deputy mayor would have to take over for a little while. I'd like to have him that opportunity. Yeah.
The only other thing I think we should, if another group appears on the outside that's willing to share this type of equipment, I think we should consider that. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that's gonna happen, but if that were to appear, maybe we could share cost on this sort of thing with the community.
And the commission meets next week, so, that's an issue that we can address with them, that while the money's there, the council would prefer that they reach out to the organizations within the community who might be more willing to support this type of program.
Find out what the sheriff did with their equipment.
Well, they're holding on to it. We've talked with them and a few other organizations.
I think the price is like, what was it, $4,000 for the computer and the laminating and all of that.
Sounds about right. I have the information here, but that sounds about right.
Sounds like a plan. Very good. I lost my place here. I would like to have just a small discussion on the page 6 of 13, line item 5121. and the pension is. You can see it went up dramatically, and I talked to the city manager about this, and we get asked a lot of times how we're doing and how things are going, and sometimes we, or at least I, say I'm not pleased with some of the things that the state of Ohio is doing to us. So just to let everyone know what that is, if the manager would please explain why that increase is there.
Sure, be more than happy to. Mr. Garrett, if I do by chance go astray, feel free to chime in. But the short version is that the state has required how pension payments are made into the Ohio Police and Fire Fund. Typically, it is the quarter behind. And so you always have the last quarter of the year being paid in the first quarter of the subsequent year. And now what the state is saying is, no, we want the payments for that year paid within that year. So for 2013 and 2013 only, we actually have to make 5 payments towards the pensions of both police officers and firefighters to accommodate that change in the law. So that's why the additional pensions,
So we're playing
additional pension
catch up.
if you will, yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, I thought it was. Okay. Very good, thank you, sir. Any other questions for the manager about the budget?
Real quick,
Yes, sir.
same page, page 6 of 13, line item 5511, tools and equipment. We've got an increase of 54,000. Can you elaborate?
What page?
Expenses,
5511? Yes, that is for the additional purchase of 2 cardiac monitors, which are about $27,000 a piece after trade-in. We currently have 4 cardiac monitors, 1 for each medic. We were able to purchase one last year. We were bequeathed a gift from a resident, and that gift was able to cover the purchase of one last year. We have a grant pending for a second one for 2012, 2013. We should find out sometime next month. And then that still leaves 2 of the monitors which are expiring. I believe next year is the last year that they'll actually be maintenance by the manufacturer. And then after 2013, you have to buy all new monitors. So since this is an off cycle for ambulance replacement, we figured this would be a good time to acquire at least 2 of those cardiac monitors, hoping that the grant comes through.
What kind of trade-in value do they have?
That's a few $1,000s, $2,500 or $3,000, something like that. It's not.
Is that something that we can put on our engine? So it's, it's available to the medic on the fire truck?
That would be a question for Chief Carpenter to answer better than I, but since there is a cardiac monitor in each medic, I don't necessarily know that having an older model on an engine would be a benefit, but again, that's for Chief Carpenter to answer.
Yeah. Okay.
Excuse me.
Mr. Shaw, yes,
You
sir.
said these are cardiac, monitors?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Well, I was wondering about the police department. Are they the easy ones to use, or are they the ones more complex?
Well, they're not the defibrillators, they're the monitors.
Right, they're just the monitors, yeah.
Correct, yes, sir.
So it's not a lot of.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. That's a whole different kind of training.
Good, yes.
I have, page 13 of 13, number 5330. I was curious why the cemetery fund went up like double.
We are required to pay for indigent burials, and that number reflects the increase in indigent burials that we've already seen in fiscal year 2011.
Oh, okay,
Or
so-
2012, excuse me.
Okay, so when we say it's not necessarily the cemetery that's in Old Riverside, it's
Right.
that we're paying for, okay.
Right, there are some minor expenses. We typically do have to mend the fence or something along those lines over there annually, but this is to cover indigent burials.
And we're still having those bodies cremated, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's by state law, we have to do that.
That is correct, yes, sir.
And then we give the ashes to the folks who, the relatives,
That's all handled through the,
Yes,
coroner.
typically the relatives accept the ashes. If not, could potentially be a little more cost for us to
So you have to bury them then?
bury those.
And do you
ashes.
bury them in our cemetery? or-
There's no room.
They're, it's all processed under contract with the coroner's office.
Oh, okay.
They go to the closet of the house.
Wow, that went way up.
Everybody burning
Are
it.
you expecting more deaths? Is that why?
Well, we're not expecting any more deaths, we're expecting more indigent deaths, yes, sir.
That's what I mean, right? That's what you're
Yes.
expecting?
Yes, sir.
Well, we've already had 6 or maybe 7 this year, and you know, it's intermittent, you never know how many you're gonna have.
Baby boomers getting older.
Yeah, in the early years, we probably had.
Wow, that's quite an increase. Thank you. Any other questions or concerns? Seeing none then, and there's nothing else on the work session items, we will go into recess and, okay, I'm sorry.
Revenue enhancement, that was just the budget, that's part of the.
I am sorry, okay. Thank you for stopping me. Next thing on the agenda is revenue enhancements. Mr. Manager.
Yes, work session item B, part 2 is revenue enhancements. Council wanted the opportunity to talk about some of the ways that the city can generate additional dollars to offset the loss of dollars from the state and through economic conditions. We wanted to give you the opportunity. I know there was some discussion at the last meeting to talk regarding the tax credit. There was also discussion regarding raising the income tax, and there were some other discussions about some of the other possible alternatives that council might have. I know that there was a want, at least for time today, to discuss that. So we don't have any formal information prepared. I know that Mr. Fullenkamp had some additional questions regarding the tax credit. And
I
asked,
did, you've got a copy
Yes,
of
sir.
it. And it's largely a repeat of memos that has been provided to council in the past. And then the page on top is just an attempt to try to summarize that in one place instead of having to look through the memos that we've already got.
Yeah, I like the summary you put together. I think it does speak to who's gonna be impacted by this and the relative benefits to revenue increases that each will offer. And then, so we've talked about the tax credit, the income tax credit before a little bit. And tell me if I'm wrong. I'm reading this to say that if we were to change the ordinance to set the tax credit at 1%, we would raise approximately $500,000 a year.
That's right. And of course, that is just on an estimate because the wages reported vary from year to year.
Yeah. But that would be
Something
true
like that.
also of a 0.5% increase. You
That's
make
right.
that same statement, that's an estimate based on the best information we have available.
and excuse me, these numbers are based on year-end 2010.
These calculations were done on 2010 tax returns. Just yesterday, I got the 2011 data. The reported wage income went down by $13 million. So these numbers would be slightly higher, but by a small amount. So instead of being 500,000, maybe be 450,000.
Right. So who knows, maybe this year they'll go up by that 50,000. These numbers will be correct for 2013.
It is going up slightly.
I know. Yeah. So I have an affinity to reducing the tax credit. I think it's fair to most of the residents in the city to ask those that live in the city to help support the fire, police, streets, all the services we offer. Currently, people that work in, for instance, the city of Dayton don't pay any city income tax to the city. So I think it's reasonable to have them contribute. And I'm gonna suggest setting it 1% at this point, because if we set it at 1%, if we were to come and ask for a levy, an income tax levy. Their game, I mean, their cards will be in the game too. And not only no longer will they be voting to have somebody else pay for cities, now they're gonna be involved in helping to pay for these city services. That's my view on it. I think it's fair. I think it's fair to the majority of the residents. So that's what I prefer. Now, I'm not totally opposed to considering an increase. Maybe we can do some of both of these at some point, but we can start with decreasing the tax, or setting the tax credit at 1%. We know that that'll raise $500,000 a year. And we can do it legislatively.
Thank you, Mr. Fonkamp. Mr. Deputy Mayor Denny?
I sort of agree with Mr. Camp, except my suggestion is that we make it and I don't know how we would word it, but basically the credit would be for 50% of whatever our income tax is, okay? I.e., if it's, right now we're at 1.5%, they would get credit for 0.75%, okay? If we put it on the ballot and we raise and it was passed by the voters to increase our income tax to 2%, it would automatically go to a 1%, they would pay 1%. They would only get a tax credit for 1%. That way, and my only thought process, they have more skin in the game, and we don't have to go back through and change this on a regular basis. It kind of stays with, they're doing their fair share always. So, and if we increase our taxes, theirs gets increased too.
My only point would be that if we were to lock it at 1%, let's say, that same thing would happen. They would have skin in the game for all upcoming elections.
But if you lock it at 1%, they always get 1% credit.
That's correct.
Okay.
Off of what, yeah, that's
So-
correct. So at 1.5%, they're gonna pay 0.5%.
Right.
If we raise our income tax to 2%, they'll be paying 1%.
Well, to
If we lock the credit.
have paid
1%.
1%, we'd have to do that as council.
One second.
You understand what I'm saying? Because if we lock the credit.
If we lock their credit
Their credit
at
at 1%.
1%,
If
they
we
get credit for 1% of what they pay somewhere
That's
else.
right.
Okay? So if they're already paying 2.25%, they get a 1% credit towards ours.
That's right. And so if we're at 2%, they would pay 1%.
Well, present day, they would
Mr.
just
Smith?
pay a 0.5% based on
If we go to 1%,
what you're
correct.
saying. But you
Absolutely.
can't do it automatically.
Where with mine, initially, we would get, instead of $500,000, we would be making $750,000. And we may be able to go longer before we have to go ask for that extra 0.5%.
And I don't have an objection to your approach, I'm just trying to compare.
No, and I can appreciate that. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
not have to go back.
Yeah, but you can't say automatically raise the credit. You have to do that by council.
Legislatively, you're gonna have to
I'm not sure
You
about
can't
that.
do it automatically, unless you're gonna put it before the voters.
Honestly, I'm not sure about that, but
I would think so.
What,
to have a floating
Have to go
credit.
on
To
ballot.
have every time we wanna change the credit, we would have to come before council, I would
That's correct.
assume.
I'm not sure.
I can't answer that question with definitive.
Yeah, I can't.
I would have to consult the law director.
so whichever way, I agree that folks need to pay their share. And I was at took the mayor's place at the mayor's and manager's meeting, and I was talking to the mayor and a council person from New Lebanon, and they don't give any credit at all, period.
A lot of cities, so.
And so there's more and more folks, and that's a lot smaller community than we are. They was 6,700 people or something like that. So, and they said if they gave credit, they wouldn't have any money at all. So I don't see it as necessarily a negative thing for us to, I mean, sure it's gonna be somewhat unpopular initially, but I think, by being able to increase or at least keep our services where they are, I think it's gonna be a positive overall.
Anyone else have any thoughts on this?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Schott?
let me get this clarified in my head what's going on, let's make it easy. People who work in Riverside pay 1.5%.
Work in Riverside, that is correct.
Working with.
Yeah, work in Riverside, not
Right.
live in
Right.
Riverside, just work in Riverside.
Right.
But people who live in Riverside, works in Dayton, who pays 2.25%, correct?
That is correct.
So you wanna put additional another 1% because they lived here,
0.5%.
a 0.5% there? So in other words, they're gonna be paying 2.75%
Yes.
total.
Yes, because there's a cost to live in this city. Costs money to support homes or the streets.
And just as a point of, I talked to a couple of folks, they didn't understand that, they thought that when they got the credit, when they signed up that whole thing and they got credit for what they paid and all that, they thought that we then went to the city of Dayton
Maybe it's not.
and got our money back.
I wish it
From
was
there.
that way.
So, I think if folks know, and they said, oh, well, if you don't get that money, then yeah, we agree that we, and even though they were going to have to pay extra, they were okay with it, because they thought we were getting money from their they thought their credit was actually us going to Dayton and getting part of their money back, for us. So once they understood that, they were a little more, and I think maybe we need to, if we move forward with this, one of the things we'll have to do is put something in the newsletter and on the website to educate folks on what really happens with tax dollars. So,
Mr. Schott, do you want to continue your thought, or are you finished with that thought?
Well, that one, it just, I don't know.
Yeah, I certainly,
It's
totally
a
disagree
new
with you guys.
concept, but in
It is not a
11
new concept, it's just not one that's used around
a
here
popular
very often.
concept, let me
And
read.
it's not a
It's
popular
not a
concept.
popular concept, but the
And
one you
if
talk about
we-
in New
it is in
England.
northern Ohio.
But this is not northern Ohio.
Yeah, this is what I'm gonna get. We are surrounded by a couple cities with a very large income tax. That area you're talking about down in New Lebanon is not. Up north is not.
Hold it. New Lebanon, yes, they are. A lot of those people work in the city of Dayton, which has a high income tax.
You think?
Right,
New Lebanon,
and we're gonna make
I
that
was
clear.
talking to the mayor, yes, I think, because he said he was paying Dayton's income tax. The city council person said they were paying Dayton's income tax. And so they're paying both Dayton's.
So they're
and-
living in Dayton too,
No.
they're driving that far to
They're-
work in, I'm sorry,
they're
driving
working-
that far to work in
They're
Dayton.
working Dayton and living.
See, I didn't think they would
My
drive.
dad lived in Farmersville and worked in Dayton, so, there's a
Well,
lot of
why-
folks that live
You're
in
wanting,
Columbus.
you're
and work
wanting
in
to
Dayton.
raise the people that live in Riverside tax?
Yes,
No,
yes.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
the city
Yeah, I was gonna say, don't say no,
charges
yes.
more than we do, and then what about the people that live in Dayton that work in Riverside? Should we raise their income tax?
Well, no,
Instead of
that's the 1.5, see?
They want to have.
And I
Yeah,
think
they
we
pay
should,
1.5.
I think
I mean,
we,
I rake our people here.
I think we should go to the ballot with it, at least try the ballot before
We
we
need to
do
get
that.
something straight on this.
Because
We're not
if we do
damaging
this, in my opinion is if we do
Our
this
people.
by legislation, then we do find out it's not generating what we thought, or we need to go back again. We have no choice but to go back to the voters. And when we go back to the voters are going to say
No.
no.
That's your opinion.
Yeah.
That is my
What
opinion,
you
but I
need-
strongly,
but I think if you tell them what you're going to do. with
then let them
money,
vote on it. Let them vote on it, is my opinion.
All we're doing is stop giving them credit for
We're trying
for other
we're
places.
trying to build a city here, and we're trying to be business friendly. And you're wanting to go before the taxpayers and ask.
We're
them
not
to
hurting the businesses at all, we're
Not
hurting
Riverside
those who
people.
come to our city
raise
to
the
work.
new employees that will be coming to our city with the building of these office buildings and businesses moving into our city. They're gonna have to pay more income tax than they
Just
would.
the employees will.
Well, just the employees, yes.
We're paying
But
for
if
all
you,
that.
if you legislatively do that, everyone who lives here is going to be increased. Which one would you rather have? Everybody that lives here increased 1%, or just those
Who uses
employees
the
coming into our
services?
city to work be increased 0.5%? Which one would you prefer?
I would prefer that we go and reduce the credit that we offer
Yeah,
them
for
now.
Riverside people,
Because-
and then raise the ones on the outskirts of town, get some of our money back for the city,
Keeps our income tax at 1.5,
for the people
still
in
makes
Riverside.
us competitive with other cities. The only people affecting are those people that don't work in the city of Riverside.
But you gotta remember one thing, Mr.
They
Smith,
don't live in
when
Riverside.
businesses move here, they don't look at their income tax. They don't look at our income tax, they look at our property tax on there. They care less what our income tax
West
is.
County.
If they build their building, hey, if you wanna work here, yeah, you're gonna pay the city income tax. So that doesn't help us generate, business in the city by
But that-
raising our income tax.
but that
But the
doesn't-
property tax does.
But that doesn't jive with what we're told about why Beaver Creek is successful.
Well, that's state road.
Beaver Creek is
Here.
successful.
Because they don't have an income tax.
No,
That's what
Beaver
we've been
Creek is
told.
successful because they have green land to build on
That's
out
one
there.
reason.
That is the main
The
reason.
other argument is that they have a low income.
No.
Their property tax is very high.
I've been told that and you've been told that, I'm sure.
No, they have no income tax whatsoever, but Beaver Creek's been tossing the idea around for years to raise it in there. It doesn't make a difference to a developer or a guy who owns a business.
Well, I disagree.
It doesn't,
I don't think it does that.
it doesn't.
So you're talking about reducing people that live in Riverside 50%,
No.
wait a minute, and
No.
then raising people that does not live in Riverside but works in
Who are you
Riverside.
asking? What I'm
I'm
proposing?
asking anybody if
Okay,
they answer me.
Ms. Campbell, what I'm saying is we should keep it like it is, but go to the ballot and ask everyone who works in Riverside to pay 0.5% more.
Well, see,
What
that's-
Mr. Fulenkamp and
that's
Mr.
not
Denning,
right.
what, could you listen, please? Okay, what Mr. Fulenkamp and Mr. Denning are asking is that every person that works in our city has to pay 1%
No,
more.
live.
Working, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
live in
live.
our city. Anyone who lives in our city, who makes an income has to pay 1%.
No, that's not what we're saying,
No.
100% more. We're saying that we're gonna reduce the credit to 1%, it's currently 1.5%.
What I just said.
And so what we're saying is if we reduce the credit to 1%, that people that, if we reduce the credit to 1%, people that work in Dayton, for instance, and live in Riverside are going to end up paying, at this point in time, 0.5% income tax to the city of Riverside, in addition to what the tax liability is to the city of Dayton.
And Mr. Schock was right, they would have to pay 2.7.
That's correct.
I'm talking about raising the ones, that people that does not live in Riverside, but that works in Riverside.
That's what I'm proposing.
And the people that live in Riverside, reduce theirs 50%.
Well, they
where
pay
only
nothing
pay
now.
one. Well, they pay
nothing
one.
now.
They pay nothing
They
now.
pay nothing now. I mean, if we raise our income tax,
People live in Riverside doesn't pay any.
if they work in Dayton, they don't pay Riverside any.
They
income
don't
tax
pay anything to Riverside.
to provide the services.
But we service their streets, they have our fire department, they have our police department, and they don't have to pay for it.
That's right.
Everybody
Just the
else
property
does.
tax.
Everybody else does.
I'm not sure how that's viewed as being reasonable.
I think if you ever want to go back to them, they won't ever vote for another one if we need to go back. Ms. Campbell?
I like.
I'm still not happy with that, go ahead, no, go ahead, I'm still not happy with that. I think we need to look into it a little more, the way that, because I'm thinking one way, but you're saying, no, it's not that way.
No, you're thinking the correct way. Riverside's 1.5 right now, okay? For somebody who works in Riverside, they pay 1.5% of their income, gross income. People who live in Riverside but work in Dayton,
That's more.
they pay 2.25%. But we go to the program that we're discussing about, they'll jump up in 2.75% because they gotta pay their 0.5% for living in Riverside, plus pay their 2.25% for working in Dayton.
Well, now, that would it affect them if they,
I can even
Say
make
they
it worse,
lived
I
in-
can throw it both ways in that figure,
just second, if
2.75.
they lived in another city, period, if they lived in another city, period, and worked in Riverside,
Yeah.
can you raise theirs to equal out?
No, we can't.
Why?
That's the way the law, legislation,
Right.
Well, they
that's
do
the
it.
law. That's the way
That's
the law's
what,
written.
that's what I asked our
That would be
state
nice.
representatives to do.
Yeah.
Was say, change the state law so that where you live have priority on your income tax. And
Exactly.
what they told me was, good luck, you need to change your rules so that you don't give credit for folks that work outside your city.
Let me help you with that
That's what
good
we're
luck.
on the Riverside.
Your city has enough voting population to change that.
Well, you know, it's not fair because we only get a vote on Riverside thing, we don't get a vote on the Dayton thing.
Yeah, I know, but that's.
So that's not right.
That's
It
taxation without
is.
representation.
No, it's no such thing as that.
That's the way it's been.
All we're suggesting is
Well, we got the
that
right to
everybody should
vote.
pay in this. That's the fairest way to go. It's a
No.
responsibility. If you
I
wanna
don't
live
know
here,
about that.
you gotta pay, I mean, you gotta pay part of what
You
you.
don't have to.
Everybody
You
pays
you don't have
taxes.
to now, but again, that's that fairness issue. Why not? Other than, yeah, I don't understand your explanation other than.
Okay, the reason it's set up this way is because
It's
people
easy.
who work here will need an ambulance, they'll need things while they're here, and I hear one of the reasons why. But traditionally, it's been that way, and we will be one of the very few cities that has that 1% on there, and I don't think that's fair.
Yeah, but now they have to pay
But
for
I
that.
believe,
Now they have to pay for
a
that.
lot of other folks are looking at the same thing for the exact same reasons that we're doing. We need to replace our revenue, and folks need to, I mean, you spend 16 hours a day where you live. You only spend normally 8 hours a day where you work.
Who has control of
We're a bedroom
what
community.
we?
Exactly.
You said it's against the law.
You give
Who
us
has
jobs,
control of
we
that?
can change this, but that's not happening.
State government?
I think we need to, if we ever have to go back, we'll
That's
never
who we
get
need
it
to
on.
talk to, or they go.
Yeah, John.
Oh, I know, and we have to, we need to talk to the state. And as Mr. Denning said, good luck. They're not
Let me talk.
Columbus,
city friendly.
Columbus, Cleveland, Dayton, Toledo, Cincinnati,
three
is
cities.
not gonna let that happen.
Just say.
Okay,
Well, we don't know
because
that.
they are making too much on income tax for folks that work inside those areas to let
Yeah, and-
suburbs take up and do their part. So the only answer we have, actually, we have two answers, Mr. Mayor. We could raise our income tax in our city to 3%,
No, we can't.
okay?
They
By,
wanna do
by,
that?
by sending it to the voters, if they would approve that, okay?
No.
And again, get us the same thing, or we can go and give less credit, because then, if we raise it to 3%, okay? Then those folks that work in Dayton would pay us 3/4%.
But then they will raise their taxes.
And then Dayton will raise their taxes, and then we won't get anything, and those
Well,
folks that work here are the only ones that end up on the short.
But if we only go to 2%, we're on even,
And those folks,
Almost
that work
everybody-
in
we're
Dayton
the
still
lowest-
don't pay a share.
we're the lowest tax in the county now. So if we go to 2, we'll just be average with everyone else.
If
Dayton,
the-
who is higher than we are,
If we can get it passed.
if we can get it passed. But at least I think we need to
And
ask
right now-
before we legislate,
now-
we do it. we
Right
need to
now,
ask.
hold on, right now, it would have to go on the ballot, the soonest it could go on the ballot would be May,
That is correct.
okay? So the soonest it would take effect would be 2014.
That is true.
Okay, where if we passed this legislation, okay, to give less credit, whether it's 1%, 3/4%, 50% of whatever our income tax is or whatever, we would be able to see an increase in our revenue for the city next year, and we would be able to start repairing more of our streets, do more things, take care of more capital improvements, than what we do now. And if we don't do something soon, we're gonna be bankrupt.
Well, we get.
And
Okay,
the longer we
get
keep
grant
talking
money.
about this, the longer it's gonna take.
If we put it on the ballot in May and it becomes effective 2014, we still will be okay. We're gonna be okay. I know we're not gonna have a big increase in our dollars, but we will be okay, and the citizens will have the opportunity to tell us whether they want
And
better
if they
service.
say no,
Then we can legislate.
okay, so then you're going against, then you're really gonna get beat up, because you just asked them and they told you no, and now you're gonna tax them anyway.
We need to dig deeper into this before we decide on it.
So I think that we should decrease the credit that we give them and see where it goes. Because the folks that, that aren't paying for services now will start paying for at least part of their services. They still aren't gonna be paying 100%.
They're paying for, they'll bill you for an
At least they're
ambulance
paying a little
ride.
bit. I agree with Mr. Denny, we ought to do
If you don't have
a
one.
3/4% credit. Because it's not fair to go back and put that burden on our taxpayers that are paying the tax. Those people.
You are putting the burden on the taxpayers that are paying the tax.
Well,
That's what you're doing.
just as we just explained, people that work in Dayton and live in Riverside, they're paying 2 3/4 to Dayton and they're paying none to Riverside.
Well, now they're gonna pay 50, they're gonna pay 0.5% to Riverside.
Well, they're
You're
just-
increasing
At least
everybody's.
they're paying
We
a
lower
portion of the services that they receive here in our city.
And I think if you explain to them that we're not getting credit, their credit from Dayton, I don't think you're gonna have that big a problem with it.
Again, the survey pointed out that people do not understand the tax credit.
Right.
They don't understand how it works. So,
We need to explain that to them when we go for a.
Well, if we lower
No,
ours,
I think
they're gonna raise theirs that much to get more.
we have the power to do something legislatively that's positive for this community.
Now.
I don't think it's possible.
Well, I disagree with you.
I respectfully disagree.
I'd like to make a motion that we bring forward legislation.
I think we need to dig deeper. I'd like to make a few phone calls.
Go ahead, you make it.
May, is that what you wanna do?
Yep.
You wanna bring forth legislation for what?
For decreasing the tax credit by 50%.
There's a motion on the floor, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, is there any more discussion on the motion?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, just for clarification, so the motion is to reduce the credit by 0.75%.
Huh?
Instead of that 0.75.
Yes, okay.
0.75.
So now it's 3/4%.
To reduce it
No, to make our residents pay,
more?
yes,
No. Well,
More,
more.
yes,
it's more,
if they work in Dayton.
or
other-
anywhere,
other-
any
Any
income
place
tax,
else
any city.
that
Oakwood,
charges them.
Trotwood, right,
If they work in Dayton or any other
anyway,
city.
any city, they charge.
Mr. Kirk?
Yeah, but is that gonna affect their paying this?
So what you're saying is 50% tax credit.
No? There's
Right,
like
so
75.
my thought is, as I explained before, is that then if in the future we raise our income tax, it automatically goes up. We don't have to go back and change our credit again.
It's not 0.75%, it's 50%.
Of our income tax,
50% tax credit.
right? Is that, if that's the legal, if we're allowed to do it that way,
Because the total credit now is 1.5%, so,
No,
which is 100% of our total,
right.
so,
So if you reduce that by 50%,
Maybe
it's
0.75.
0.75% is what you're reducing the credit by.
well, but
Right.
if we can write it up as the magic 50%, then,
You're just playing with numbers.
yeah,
Okay.
so that we don't have to go back to legislation.
Good luck.
in the
okay,
future.
so I need clarification on this, if you work in Dayton and you pay 2.25%, now how much, and you live in Riverside, how much are you gonna pay if we pass this
3%.
legislation?
Huh?
3%.
Right,
Would be your
3%.
total bill.
right,
3%.
In Riverside?
3%.
Yes, for Riverside,
Your
We're
total,
only paying
yeah.
one now?
1.5.
Which will
And
give us
rate-
approximately.
If you work in
It's Dayton tax plus Riverside tax.
Which will give
If
us,
they talking here,
She's
$100,000 in revenue, which would help us pay for Burkhardt.
Okay, Mr. Kerp has the floor.
Well, if you work in Dayton or some other city that has a higher tax rate than Riverside, Riverside would give you a 50% tax credit towards your Riverside tax liability,
Correct.
which is 0.75 of the 1%. The way, if you look at the sheet that the finance director and city manager gave us this evening, if you look at the RETA income tax form and the way you calculate all that stuff, what you're giving is you're reducing the tax credit from 100% down to 50%. Right now, you get 100% tax credit against your Riverside tax liability. This would give you a reduced credit, which would be 50% towards your Riverside tax liability.
But it's still 3%.
But it's still, you're paying additional income tax for living here in Riverside and working in Dayton.
Or whatever.
Or any place else.
Yeah, or any place else, we can go to
Or any
Oakwood,
place else.
2.75 on there if you work in Oakwood,
Okay.
and live in Riverside.
Any further discussion? I'd like to have a vote on this, please. And could you read the,
This is just to bring the legislation forward.
Well,
This is
correct.
not
Bring the
approving
legislation
this
forward.
evening.
Correct.
but I want to hear what the motion is.
Bring forth legislation to decrease the credit by 50%.
Is that correct?
Income tax credit.
Income tax credit. Fine.
I mean, you could say it's stated on also, from 1.5 to 7.75, but I think the intent of this is to have
It's
it
the
slide.
intent.
So
To have a slide
I'm good with that.
if we have to go to the voters and increase our income tax. We don't have to go back and change it.
I like my old idea, increase it to 2%, drop off a couple mils.
That's
We can
all
do
right.
that in the future.
And, well, maybe. Okay, everyone's heard the motion. Call roll, please.
Mr. Denny?
Absolutely.
Mr. Fulenkamp?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Kerr?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mayor Fowdy?
Absolutely not. Okay, thank you. Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll go into recess for 12 minutes until 7:30, so please be back here for a meeting at 7:30. We're in recess.